Namaskar. Today is the 12th of July, Monday. This is episode number 201, and let us jump straight to global news. In global news, Virgin Galactic Branson soars to space aboard rocket plane as Elon and Jeff Bezos get ready for their own flights. Welcome to PGurus channel, Sridharji, and it's a great Monday morning.
Great Monday morning. Good morning to everybody, and good evening to folks in India and rest of the world, and good afternoon to those in Europe. Yes, I think we had an exciting weekend, and Mr. Branson demonstrated that he's the geek amongst the geeks, and he has taken off on his rocket-launched plane, onto the skies. Everything that he touches, he's able to turn it into a realizable outcome. So it's quite an amazing, to me, is one of the most influential personalities. If you have to put, five people, of the century, he probably is right there with few others. So I think it was a great success and a great moment.
And Novak wins Wimbledon to tie 20 Grand Slams with his illustrious peers Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Vietnam learns to exploit nationalist rage over Chinese maps. China condemns unreasonable suppression as US expands its economic blacklist. Xi and Kim Jong-un vow greater cooperation amid foreign hostility, according to KCNA, North Korea's news agency. And Suga and Moon are likely to hold their first summit during Tokyo Olympics. Your thoughts, sir?
So my thoughts are, congratulations to Novak, 20th Grand Slam, amazing 3 titles this year, and he's rapidly moved and he has matched his peers. Congratulations. He probably will go on to maybe win at least another 2 to 3 Grand Slams and setting an enviable record. The other thing that we have missed is, again, Britain misses a trophy, a global event, and Italy comes back and takes away the Euro 2020. Congratulations to Italy, but England played a great game, and best wishes to them. Vietnam, launching an embassy or a consular office in Bangalore is a reflection of their growing sentiments towards India, as well as a lot more synergistic alignment in terms of the opportunities. They're more looking at investments as well as expanding the industry. So an honorary consul general is a great recognition, and it's a wonderful news for people. Apparently, he is going to be the first point of contact as a conduit into Vietnam from the state. China is, as usual, there's more and more Chinese companies are getting added to the blacklist within the listing here. So they will be delisted, and obviously China is enraged. How does it respond? It responds by forming partnership with like-minded, if I have to use the word, roguish countries. Who is a better country than North Korea? So Mr. Kim Jong-un says that, let's form partnership and work together. To me, it's a problematic development, because the reason is that in the event of a problem in South China Sea and East China Sea, the renegade North Korea is right sitting there. And at least to some extent, President Trump kept him quiet. Suga and Moon is much needed, because Korea and Japan have had some rough weather in terms of collaboration and trying to work together. This is what United States has been working eternally to form this trilateral relationship. No more quadrilateral relationship. It's trilateral relationship between Japan, United States, and Korea to move the agenda forward. Depending on which time of the day you wake up, US may have a different policy. But anyway, that development to me is positive. Suga and Moon coming together in the Asian continent.
Yeah, we are still waiting to hear from the US press spokesperson as to why they keep flip-flopping like this, as to who is pulling the levers from behind. But that's something that we'll have to wait for a long time. Europe has enough COVID-19 jabs to vaccinate 70% of the people. EU Parliament seeks sanctions on Iran officials over human rights violations. Protests growing in Iraq over power shortages amid heat and dependence on Iran. And Abbas and Erdogan discuss reconstruction and reconciliation with Hamas. Sir, there's never a dull moment in the Iran-Iraq area.
Never a dull moment in the Iran-Iraq area. First, to wrap up, Europe, which has seen resurgence in this Delta COVID variants, very soon probably Lambda, and probably another version has come as well. So Europe says that it has enough vaccine, so which is a good news. So that they can dispense with it, and I think their vaccination rates has been much better than many countries in the world. They're around the 60-65%. EU Parliament on Iran. I mean, again, Iran is very much like United States. Depending on who you talk to, the policies vary. You have some people within European Union who wants to have deal and negotiations with Iran, and then you have some people within the EU who says, hey, we need sanctions to be imposed on Iran. Nothing is going to work. Human rights, this is the persecutions that happened, and the political opponents who are being brutally victimized in Iran. I think this is around that. As far as the Iraq is concerned, as you rightly pointed out, this three I's, Iran, Iraq, Israel, is going to be a permanent problem as we look around the center and as we look around the West Asia region. Now, Erdogan coming into the mix is a new drama into this political triangle, right? Previously, it was Egypt. It used to be Iranians. It used to be Lebanese. Now we have the Turkish, because Lebanon is almost on the verge of collapse, coming in. None of this is, augurs very well in terms of stability and peace. What you're seeing is very much fragmentation and islands of problems developing, and there is no global leadership.
Air defenses installed in Kabul as Taliban gains control. In Ghazni and Takhar, Afghan forces hold control with civilian. Chinese citizens evacuated as Afghan situation deteriorates in Afghanistan. Depending on who you talk to, now we hear that Kandahar and Mazar-e-Sharif are under Taliban control. Where do you think this is going to stop? Are they going to completely overrun the country of Afghanistan, sir?
Are there any doubts, Sriji? There's no doubts. They're going to not only completely overrun the country, the brutalist regime is going to be back in force. Chinese struck a deal with the Taliban, not Afghan. Taliban forces have given an official press release. The Uyghur Muslims are terrorists, so China is dispensing with them rightly, and they are very warm and supportive of the Chinese investment and development plan in Afghanistan. So that clearly tells you which way Afghanistan is going. 85% of the territory is taken. What is left? And if there are civilians and women in fighting together with the Afghan forces, that also tells you how long this is going to last. I think the complete Taliban has been preparing itself for the inevitable exit of the United States, and the Biden administration only accelerated that very fast. I think that we're going to be back into that repressive or regressive regime in power. And of course, the United States is going to say, I'm helpless, what can I do? It is the local problem. And there are enough forces within the present administration, or enough constituent elements within the administration who may just turn a blind eye and things will go forward. A very sad situation, but I think that's where we are.
And in India news, as the situation deteriorates in Afghanistan, India brings back its personnel and Indo-Tibetan forces from Kandahar. In a first, Vietnam appoints first honorary consul general in Bengaluru. We referred to this in an earlier discussion today. Canada, Germany, and Maldives open travel for Indian citizens. So now slowly but surely a few corridors are getting open, sir.
The few corridors are getting open. It's an acknowledgement and recognition that India is in control of its COVID situation. I think it's about 450,000 cases. India has 300 million vaccines they have crossed first dose, and close to 70 to 73 million have crossed on 2 doses. So India is slowly making its way, and they seem to be in control of the COVID, at least the variant 2 situation, well orchestrated. So the corridors are getting open. I gather that, at least from in the United States, the US via Europe, the Delta, which uses Air France, that corridor is open. People are able to travel to Bangalore and Bombay in that specific corridor, which means through the French airports. I don't think Britain is open as yet, but this Germany is a welcome development. Canada is a welcome development. Of course, Maldives, very small population, but significant. I'm told there are another 6 more corridors which are being reviewed for opening.
And new information and broadcasting minister to focus on proactively combating fake news and negative media internationally. UPATS arrests 2 Al Qaeda terrorists and recovers explosives and foils a plan to target senior BJP leaders. India to construct 60,000 kilometers of world class national highway as Mr. Gadkari continues his infra push. India crosses 300 million first doses and 71 million with 2 doses. So the vaccination plan is well along.
The vaccination plan is well along. They have an average rate depending on how many centers and what the distribution is. Average rate somewhere between 3.54 million to about 5.56 million. So 4 to 6 million seems to be their vaccination rate. On occasions, they touch that. This number could dramatically change once they have more vaccines coming from August. You remember July itself, there is an acceleration. August, you're going to have Sputnik, you probably will have Moderna, and you will also have more manufacturing coming from Covaxin and Covax, sorry, Covishield, in the process that the vaccination rates will further accelerate. So that's pretty good news. As far as there's one person who is in the news every day, making some announcement and building a road somewhere in India. That is Mr. Gadkari. I mean, he never loses any. He's always, every day, is active with new projects. Now, I think this is a very positive development, if I'm correct, which is Rajiv Chandrasekhar, who is a technocrat from University of Illinois, who worked in the Silicon Valley, who is also a Minister for State in the information technology and the communication and so on. So at least they have 2 technocrats who understand this space and domain very well, being part of the telecommunication and information technology ministry. And that's a good news, both to deal with these tech platforms, but also to the extent of rebutting the news that is coming out, and also tracking the social channels, which are where there are no mechanisms to control. But let's see how they combat that. So these are all positive developments, and I think India has done the right thing by they assess the situation and they've started to move people out of Afghanistan, which every country is doing. Australia had its last troop leaves, EU had last troops leave, and I think very soon United States will have almost everybody gone.
And in US news, officials contemplate start mandating as vaccine rollout flounders and door-to-door program receives wide criticism. We've talked about this in the past, and Sridharji, I'll just, if you, with your permission, I'll move on to the next topic. House
Sure.
Republicans call for comprehensive audit of pandemic-related unemployment insurance fraud. Biden infrastructure plan stalls as reconciliation program is contemplated. So the reconciliation is between the House and the Senate, isn't it, sir?
No, the reconciliation is simply put a program together, give it to President, he signs the order. That's it.
Oh,
There's
I see.
There's no Democrats.
I see.
It's only Democrats.
So there is no vote on that one.
No. A reconciliation bill is a bill that is written by the majority in the House, sent to the President for his signature, done.
So let's get back to vaccination. There are some states that have gotten excellent vaccination numbers, and the others are resisting. And somebody is trying to draw a correlation that it is the red states that are resisting vaccination, and the blue states are well along on the vaccination path. Your thoughts, sir, before we move on to our next item.
First and foremost, I think our vaccinations have stalled at 48%. They are right in the assessment. The gap is around, depending on which state. If you take the Texas and Florida and California and New York, California and New York are just above 50%, about 51%. Then if you take Texas and Florida, let me kind of quickly look at the number. So Florida is at 47%, Texas is at 42%, California is at 51%, New York is at 55%, and Pennsylvania is around 50.7%. So there's some justification in people making the statement that there is a clear divide between the red states and the blue states. The argument the red states will make their 4 years that we are probably not in tall structures and so on, and we have been able to combat this better even during the phase one and the emerging phase two. So hence there has been reactions, adverse reactions to the vaccination. So this would be the reaction. So my own personal thing is that it's time that the red states as well take a more positive view or trustful view rather than positive, trust the vaccines and move forward rather than apprehensions around it, because without vaccination, I just don't believe how United States is going to combat the variant 3. So I think there has to be education program. I don't support this door-to-door, door-knocking program because it's a fundamental violation of privacy, but more awareness and educational programs. I think we have talked about this for almost 18 months. One can go back to the first 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 programs in DGI. We have been saying that there has been no awareness education. There's been no awareness education. Rather than awareness and education, we have all this stuff. Just to wrap this point up, that there is a lack of, they're not approving the booster vaccine which Moderna and Pfizer have demanded from Dr. Fauci. He's saying, let's first get this. So emergency approval has not been, which also creates a little bit of a problem. What happens to the people if these vaccine 1 and 2 is not sufficient to combat for some of the people who have been vaccinated?
And Texas is now investigating 386 more cases of voter fraud, Attorney General reports, and Pennsylvania orders counties not to comply with the GOP senator request for 2020 election data. So a GOP, a Republican senator, has requested for the 2020 election data, and Pennsylvania state saying don't comply with this. Why, sir?
Yeah, because it's a governor who is Tom Wolf is the governor. His governor says no, don't comply with it, and there is then you have the what you call as the judicial branch, which is also supporting that. The legislative branch is saying go for it based on their visit to Arizona and the Arizona election audits. They say that we should also do in Pennsylvania. So many states are following, but you're going to see this tussle going on, saying that this is political. So this election is not going to resolve us. So therefore, everybody must read who
painted my state purple.
Must read.
Thanks for that pitch, sir. Usually me who's doing it. And let's move on. YouTube deletes CPAC video about Trump lawsuit. Group cannot load content. That's what YouTube says. And judge issues an injunction against Biden's USDA over race-based loan forgiveness program. This is interesting. There's a lot of stuff going around this loan forgiveness program. However, I have not heard from SBA on all my applications, so I don't know where the money is going to. Certainly, it is not going to the ones who need it most. Your thoughts, sir?
My thought is, I think we're going to do, we haven't planned, but we are probably this Saturday or very, very soon, we're going to do a fireside just to draw up the whole distribution, how much of money has been allocated and spent. Folks, you got to understand, whenever you have billions and billions and billions of dollars dispensed, there is going to be fraud. And there has been fraud. Doesn't matter which government agency is doing it. Whenever a government is involved, then you will probably take it for granted that there is going to be a problem. There's tremendous amount of fraud. And on top of that, you have this discrimination, which is namely, if you're this, you're forgiven. If you're not this, then you're not. A poor guy is a poor guy. It doesn't matter whether he is white, black, brown, or green, right? But I don't know why they don't use, even in a developed nation such as the United States, why they don't use economic criteria, but they bring back all this other nonsense.
And Capitol Police to use Army surveillance system on Americans to identify emerging threat. Big Brother, sir?
Big Brother, yes. I think surveillance is coming. Look, I think Democratic administration or the progressive Democratic administration wants to have complete control of your DNA. where you live, what you do, whether you got vaccinated, whether you got loan, who do you vote for? Are you a registered voter, unregistered voter? Can we give you a voter roll? Have you received, how many children do you have? Have you received this benefit, that benefit? Do you want this application? They pretty much want where you go, what you do, and whenever you go, are you carrying the blue flag? So it looks like they pretty much want to control. This is a military level surveillance which is used by U.S. military in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, where they were remote managing and monitoring activities when you have limited number of forces, but you have very hostile terrain around you. So that's what they're going to bring it to Washington, D.C. So on one side, you talk about privacy. On the other side, you're talking about this kind of surveillance program. So there's been a lot of, again, pushback against it. But what do? You have a prevailing administration that believes in it.
And let us take a look at markets now. And in markets, finance ministers from the G20 countries back global minimum tax plan of 15%, I think. It's a big win for Janet Yellen because usually there'll be one holdout or the other. Your thoughts, sir?
There will always be objections, but the G20, but in principle, has endorsed and decided to move forward. I think it's a very good outcome for Janet, who has spearheaded this particular program. Hats off to her.
And second quarter earnings season kicks off in the week ahead with reports from major financial companies. Earnings for the S&P 500 are expected to be up a sharp 65% compared to a year ago when the economy was shut down because of the pandemic. So with this, we come to an end of today's program. If you want to summarize your thoughts on the markets, then we can call it a wrap.
Yes, I think two observations. One is that this is all the banks kick off usually. We had a trend projected, so we expect decent earnings from the banks. So therefore, the earnings numbers are expected to be pretty good. People have to be careful about the 65%. 65% is the corresponding quarter last year. Last year during the same period, the economic was deflated. So therefore, the 65% is calculated based on the last quarter's projections, but 65% relative to a year earlier when markets were, really down. So that's all. Today's morning news is the markets are flat after a bumper last week, and Friday was a great win for the markets. That's the story that we're going to have. I mean, nobody needs to lose sleep on that. We're going to finish 2021, well ahead of the time. Already we are up.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll be back again tomorrow, and namaskar.
Namaskar, thank you, and have a wonderful day. We'll see you all tomorrow.